Bethesda replies to Starfield Steam reviews in the worst way possible. We get a first look at the Fallout TV show, and EA wants you to voice your own characters. I'm Ash Dixon, and this is GINX News. Man, Starfield was a funny one. It had an unbelievable amount of hype, mainly due to two things. It was a Bethesda game, and you know, they made Skyrim, and two, it was basically Microsoft's only first-party AAA game of the year. Let's just pretend Redfall doesn't exist. Well, release week came about, Bethesda released this post full of great reviews, and I had high hopes when I sat down to play it. Well, turns out, I found it incredibly boring. And you know, that post with all those reviews, well, it obviously left out all the 3-star reviews from the likes of Eurogamer. And honestly, I know games are subjective, but I can't help but feel a lot of reviewers and the community in general just got swept up in this kind of collective delusional euphoria. It's like they mistook their satisfaction for playing something they've had to wait for their enjoyment of the actual game. They then put it down after a week because, you know, it's not actually that good, but the fading interest in the game is such a passive feeling that there's never any recognition that it was actually pretty meh. And that's why, just 3 months later, no one is playing it anymore, no one is talking about it, and all the reviews on Steam are incredibly mixed. In fact, I think the exact same thing happened with Diablo 4. You know, there was a whole ton of anticipation because it's Diablo. We get a whole load of reviews saying how great it is, and then we sit down and play it, think it's incredibly mid, and then again, months later, it just fades into the background. Hell, I'd argue that in that first month, the majority of players of both games were just fueled by the desire of enjoyment or the expectation that fun was just around the corner. Now, I have to admit, I didn't complete Starfield, I didn't even get close. In fact, I managed about 4 hours before I lost interest, and I know some people are gonna be like, well, it gets good after 10 hours or some shit. But honestly, like, do you just not have respect for your free time? No game deserves that long to get good. It should just be good. But hey, maybe the game just isn't for me. But then I think about the people it should be for. People like my friend Charlie. He was hyped for Starfield. Not only is he an avid gamer, but he lives, eats, and breathes space. He always wears like these NASA t-shirts, did a master's in rocket science, and even left my band to start a career as a literal spacecraft engineer, which is so cool, I can't even be salty about it. We do need a new drummer though. Please hit us up. So basically, he's the prime audience for a game like Starfield, and considering how excited he was about it, I thought I'd catch up with him and ask if he ended up playing it much. And well, he simply replied, nah, it's really boring. Ouch. So again, it kind of makes sense why over on Steam, it's not had the best response. And yes, I know Steam reviews aren't exactly a great barometer, it's mostly filled with ASCII butts, but there's also a reason the reviews for games like Baldur's Gate 3 and Lethal Company are overwhelmingly positive. And that leads me to the actual news story of the day. All of that before was meant to be a segue into that story, but hey, I may have gotten a bit sidetracked there, and now the whole video is about Starfield. Whoops. But getting back on track, Bethesda have taken the incredibly odd decision to start replying to some of those negative reviews. Apparently, they haven't heard of the age-old mantra, don't feed the trolls. But what's worse is the actual contents of what they're replying. For example, one person criticized the sheer amount of loading screens in the game, a very valid point. Well, someone from Bethesda decided to reply, while there may be loading screens in between fast traveling, just consider the amount of data for the expansive gameplay that is procedurally generated to load flawlessly in under 3 seconds. And like, not only is that just incredibly condescending, but also maybe you wouldn't have to load in so much data if half the game wasn't just fast traveling from a menu screen. You know, maybe make space travel an interesting part of the gameplay loop. Another player complained about how several of the planets felt empty, which, you know, maybe isn't fair. After all, they're not completely empty, dude. They all have the same generic procedurally generated points of interest. Duh. But despite that, Bethesda is still here to dig themselves deeper into the hole by saying some of Starfield's planets are meant to be empty by design. But that's not boring. When the astronauts went to the moon, there was nothing there. They certainly weren't bored. And wow, Bethesda, maybe that's because after 69 hours of space travel, they were on the moon. There's the excitement of being part of human history, the jeopardy of things going wrong, and the awe-inspiring view of that little blue marble we call home. We don't have that. I'm sitting on the couch with an oven pizza, exhausted after a day's work, thinking, damn, why are these NPCs staring deep into my fucking soul? It's all rather tone deaf, and I really struggle to understand how they thought this was ever a good idea. Why not just take the criticism on board and improve the next game? We all know the Elder Scrolls 6 has only just entered development, despite Skyrim being like 12 years old, but instead they turn up like, oh, you have valid criticism? Well, here's why you're wrong. And I don't want to go too hard on Bethesda here. A whole lot of talented people worked stupidly hard on Starfield. I kind of think they just bit off way more than they could chew. They thought they could just sprinkle on that Bethesda special sauce to a brand new sci-fi setting, and by the time it became apparent that those two things just don't complement each other, they were just too far gone. And that's a good sign for the Elder Scrolls 6. It's a return to what they do best, but also what they do best is dated and really isn't good enough anymore. So Bethesda, step away from the keyboards, Those making decisions, keep your arrogance in check and just make something great. We want to love your games. Chances are you clicked on this video for all that spicy Starfield drama, so if you're new here, well, this is actually supposed to be a news show, not just a third-rate presenter giving their fourth-rate opinions. Well, we have another Bethesda story, as we've now got our first look at the Fallout TV show. It's in the works over at Amazon, and considering the Rings of Power was definitely one of the TV shows of all time, it seems like a match made in heaven. It's coming out April 12th, and we've got some official images. And as cynical as I'm being on today's show, it's looking pretty cool. It's got those classic blue and yellow vault clothes, an army of Brotherhood of Steel power suits, and even Voldemort's along for the ride. I joke, of course, that's the Ghoul, who will be played by Walton Goggins. And look, we all know video game adaptations have a rocky past, but series like The Last of Us and Arcane have shown that yes, they can actually be very good. Here's hoping Fallout joins that list. Voice acting can really elevate a game. Just take a look at NBA 2K15.
We gotta get this train right back on track, real quick like.
That's right, we all have that attitude. The train will be rolling in no time, let's do it.
Well, EA wants to take things to the next level and make you the star of the show. That's according to a new patent named Generating Speech in the Voice of a Player of a Video Game. Very catchy. And the idea here is that the player can input a load of their own voice data, that's then passed through a synthesizer module, a voice converter, and a vocoder to generate new dialogue based on the sample. And theoretically, you could become the voice of your favorite characters. That's right, soon games will be like this. For me, Master Chief, parkour! Now, interestingly, there's a lack of AI being mentioned in the patent, but I'm guessing that's surely involved in the process. But then again, this was filed back in 2020 and has only just been published last month. Either way, we've seen how good voice AIs can be right now. I've even used it to convince people that my band Young Fatigue aren't a bunch of nobodies.
Here performing their current single, Sold Out, it is Young Fatigue!
We need a new drummer, Luca! Anyway, I have mixed feelings on this one. On one hand, it would be really cool to hear yourself and to really live out that fantasy of being the hero. But as we've seen from games like Baldur's Gate 3, some voice actors are ridiculously talented. And realistically, I'd much rather just hear them. Plus, there's the issue of inputting all of this data. When a new game comes out, you just want to play it, not spend hours recording voice content to upload. But that's not the only problem. There's also the issue of conveying multiple emotions. Different scenes require different deliveries. And if all your voice data is you being super happy and excitable, it's going to be rather awkward during a tragic death scene. Baby! No. Don't do this to me, baby. Don't do this to me. Come on! Not even going to apologise for that one. But what do you think? Would you like to use your own voice in games? Let me know in the comments down below. And that's the show. Thanks for tuning in and being here while we're still trying to grow the channel. A like and subscribe would be massively appreciated. Check out yesterday's show somewhere around here. Have a fantastic day and we'll see you tomorrow. Baby.